Welcome to another episode of Behind the Dreamers. I'm Jennifer Loading, and we are talking to the achievers, the creators, the magic makers, and the dreamers. These are our friends. These are your friends, and they are living the extraordinary. Today's episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Photography. If you are a creator needing post-production, consultation, or promotion, Walt is your guy. Whether short films, YouTube films, photography work, or a new headshot, he can help you find a solution to match your needs. To learn more about Walt, you're going to want to go to photosbywalt.com. We also want to give a shout out to Chris Clow of Upbeat Media Production. If you are in need of turnkey special event production, Clow is your go-to. To learn more about him and his work, you're going to want to go to upbeatmediapro.com. All right, so we are here on another episode of Behind the Dreamers. I'm super excited. I've got an awesome guest here, one of my new friends. I guess we've been friends for a little while, but one of my newer friends, Joseph Kimbrough, and he is the CEO and founder of Apex Real Estate Investments. And so I'm excited to get him on here today and talk about his journey and what he's doing and what he's learned. So welcome to the show, Joseph. So excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to speak.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I always have fun on this show. Hey, and listen, the goal of this show is always the same thing, is to make sure when you leave, you have a good time, because that's what it's all about. We want to make sure everybody has a good time on the show. So what I want to do, I kind of want to open this up so that we can get a little insight into what you are working on, what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about your LLC and what you do.
So Apex Real Estate Investments is a privately held equity investment company. And we specifically invest in apartment buildings in Texas and the Southeast markets.
Fun. And I have a question. How did you get into that? Because this is a part of this show that I always like to find out about people, because, some people when they are young, they just kind of know they're going to be an entrepreneur. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. And so I kind of have just sort of always had that free spirit, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do and nobody's going to tell me what to do kind of thing. And so I just kind of from the time I could think about stuff, I was trying to be an entrepreneur. I was swindling when I was a kid, trying to figure out how to do it. So I want to know, how did you get into this? Was it something that you knew you were going to do, or did you just sort of kind of land in there?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to be in real estate, and specifically apartment buildings, but I started off in single family. And then after being in single family for a few years, I ended up going to a networking event where I ended up meeting some guys there, and we kind of just hit it off. We both were in martial arts. And then we talked about that. And then a month later, he invited me to his house. I met his wife. And then he asked me, hey, how would you like to own a fund? He's like, I see how you're running your business. You're really smart how you're operating that. So I said yes. And then he put me in front of the attorneys, and we got started from there.
That's cool. So you say you always wanted to be in real estate. So were you like this young kid that was kind of like, I'm going to do this, and just started doing research? Or fill me in on that.
So I started doing research, but then when I was a kid, I used to always see these here big buildings, and I'm like, man, I was like, how do you own one of those buildings? And so that was always my thing, is how do I have ownership of these here big properties? Yeah. And who owns these properties? How do I do what they're doing?
Yeah,
so
no, that's awesome.
I just started asking myself questions, asking those kind of questions,
That's awesome. Well, and the reason I'm asking that, because I interviewed a guy the other day, and I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but it was funny because he said he got on the computer one day, and he sort of kind of had this epiphany moment where he knew that what he was going to do wasn't going to generate what he was trying to achieve long term. And so he said he got on the computer, and he's younger than you. So he got on the computer, and he said he just started looking up what are some high paying professions? What is the most highest paid? And real estate came up. It came up as one of the top things. And so, and this particular guy, him and his wife, they now have a profitable, company. They did $9 million doing real estate, and now they're coaching other real estate agents and things like that. They're going into the investment side of things. And so it was an awesome conversation, but it just started with that. Let me get on the computer, sit down, and start doing some research.
Oh yeah, and so that's the same thing. Like for me, when I got started in single family, I was on the like the just buy a house, get it under contract, and then sell it to an end buyer that's gonna go flip it. But I was like, long term, this is what I want to be doing. I was watching people who've been in the industry for 20 years, and they did that, and they only own like maybe some single family houses, like maybe four or five. But that just wasn't for me. I wanted to own big buildings, so I started researching how to buy apartment buildings.
This is awesome. I think this is so good because it's I think it's so interesting to me when people decide to do something and they sit down and they like start trying to really research this and figure out, what do I need to do to make this happen? And I think this is so great. And that's why I'm asking you all these questions, because some of my favorite people that come on this show are the people that are younger than me. Then when they come on this show and I get to pick their brains about why did they pick what they're doing and how do they go about doing that? Because I feel like it doesn't matter what age you are when you want to become an entrepreneur. I think you just have that drive. Like sometimes there are accidental
Hmm.
entrepreneurs. There are people, I've had a few that have come on that have had certain circumstances that happened in their life and they became authors, or, I call it get pinned against the wall, right? Like they get stuck against the wall and they
Yeah.
decide to make a career shift. But some people I think just sort of have that drive in them. Like I said, like myself, I knew from very early on that I was going to do something. I was going to figure out some way to do something. I told you, went into the network marketing space and was in that for like 23 years in that space, and then I
Yep.
realized I'm like, well, this is cool. They were good for, where I was at the time because I was young and I needed a place to have, somewhere to go to understand entrepreneurship. But then, when I decided I needed to move away from that and had to really form my own LLC and kind of restart, I had to go back into the field and do research again. Like I didn't even know how to form an LLC. I had to learn how to do that. So I think this is awesome. And you've been doing this now for how many years?
So I've been doing this now for over a year,
Okay.
and I've been in real estate for a few years now.
Okay. Okay. What'd you do before that?
Personal training.
Really? Interesting. Well, and I've
Yep.
done some of that too. I was an
I did it
aerobics
for two
instructor.
years.
Yeah, I was an aerobics instructor for 7 years in between 1997 and like, I don't know how many years, I guess, figure that out. 1997 to 2005, I was an instructor. And so that's why a
Yep.
lot of my stuff I talk about, my background is in wellness and all that stuff. And funny enough, like I've always exercised, not when I was younger, but from that point on, I've always exercised. And so when I had my nerve condition, when I started dealing with that in 2012, that's when I got into more of the wellness side, not just so much about like the fitness, the physical part of things, but into the wellness and
Hmm.
understanding that you can't out exercise, you can't exercise yourself out of a bad diet, right? Like you can't
Oh,
eat
you
crappy
can.
and try to
Yep.
exercise, right? So,
Exactly.
so
And
you're
that's
a
part of my
veteran.
story
Oh, wait,
also.
I'm sorry. What was that?
I was gonna say that's also part of my story. With the personal training, is how I got into that is from being in the Marine Corps. And then my then girlfriend, she was like, "Hey," she's my wife now. She's like, "You're fit. You'll be a great personal trainer." And so then I was like, "Huh." I was like, "She might be on to something. Let me do that." But I quickly realized working in the gym, I was like, "I'm not making that much money here." I said, "I'm not." So I was trying to do. I was doing like I was doing network marketing on the side as well, like Amway, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
I
I remember
enjoyed
you
that. We
telling me
talked about that
this.
when we first,
Yes.
yep, when we
Yes.
first met. So I was trying to sell those shakes on the side. Like, hey, if you take this shake, you'll look like me too.
Well, at least you looked good, Joseph. You weren't like, not looking good, the part. You know what I mean? There's
This
nothing
is
like having
true.
the personal trainer that doesn't look the part and they're trying to sell you a shake and personal training.
Oh, I saw that. I've seen that in the industry. Oh my God.
Yes.
So
Well,
yeah,
and
so that yeah, so that's how I got into that. But what was your question?
no, I was going to say, go ahead. I forgot what I was going to say, but we were talking about the fitness thing. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I agree with you that there's not a lot of money to be made when you work in those gyms. Because when I was doing the aerobics, we would get paid per class to do that, right? So it wasn't even an hourly thing. It was paid per class. And I would have to do sometimes, 10, 12 classes a week just to even try to make anything. And when you start teaching that many classes back to back, I mean, I was walking out with shin splints and my calves were aching and my hips were aching. I was in my 20s and early 30s at that time when it was going on. I hurt more than I did when I was running, when I was doing that, just because of all the, well,
Yep.
and also with that too, when you're teaching aerobics, I feel like you're sort of entertaining too. You can't just be like, let me get up there and be this boring aerobics instructor, because then nobody's going to stay in your classes. And so I had I started training at Bally Total Fitness. I don't know if you remember Bally Total Fitness. They were like,
I remember.
remember the premier gym? So I started training there, and
Yep.
I had like prime classes. Like I had a Sunday morning at 9:15 over at the Q, which got bought up by 24-hour fitness. And then I had like prime classes at Bally's. And then when I moved here from there to here, it sort of, I don't know, I had to kind of start over. And so I sort of lost interest in the whole thing. But you have to entertain, and it's all show work, just like I think it's personal
Yep.
training. You still got to keep them engaged with you in that relationship building process, or they just don't want to show up. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. And I realized that like the money part when I was training at this gym, and some of my clients was like coming in, they have Bentleys, Rolls Royces, and these things, and I'm making 17 an hour to train them. I was like, so I started asking them questions. I was like, yo, I was like, what do you do? One guy, he was in oil and gas. Another guy, he's in real estate. I'm like, I know nothing about oil and gas, nor do I have interest. But real estate, I do. So that also really started motivating me, being in those environments, seeing those kind of people. As a personal trainer, that I'm there, I'm the one training them. I'm like, well, I want to do what they're doing. I don't want to do this for a long time, for a long period of time. So I just started researching and learning.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so, being a former Marine, I know several people that are Marines, and I know, I personally have not been in that environment, but I will tell you it's interesting because I'm writing about some of that in my program, some of the military background, and talking about like starting conditions and how you have these like fractal conditions when you're in these organizations, right? And how those are so important in our business. So I guess one of the questions that I want to ask you is about your work ethic, because it's apparent to me, I've talked to you several times off of this screen, so I can tell you have incredible work ethic and you do what you say you're going to do, which I think is huge. Not just from an entrepreneur standpoint, but from just a human standpoint. Like our word is everything, what we say and
Yes.
do. And so I guess my question, it's probably maybe a rhetorical. Do you feel like being in the Marines has taught you a lot, helped you a lot in this next kind of endeavor in your life?
Yes, it has. And I still remember one of my drill instructors when I was going through boot camp. Uh, I used to move kind of slow with stuff. Like I would like take my time and everything, and he'll be like, "Hurry up, Kimbrough. Time is money. Time is money. Move fast." And so I'm like, all right, let's go, let's go, let's go." And they really taught mission accomplishment. So when you take those two things and you put them together, that really contributes to how I operate in business now. Is what's what is efficient to do for this day, and I plan out for the next day. And I get those tasks done because I know that every task completed is moving me forward and closer to my goal.
Yeah, it's a good way to see things, definitely. Because I always say entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. It's work, and I think sometimes people have these great ideas that they have things they want to do, and then they're like, okay, this sounds cool to do, but then they get in and realize, oh, this isn't quite as easy as I thought it was going to be, because you've got to learn how to market yourself, and you got to be able to have conversations with people. You got to be able to convert. You got to be able to do all these things with
Yep.
people. And it's crazy. I mean, but it is, there's a lot to be learned in it. So I guess maybe my next question for you would be, what do you feel like you've learned in this journey? Because you're still young. You've got so much like time to do a lot of cool things with all of this, but I'd love to know what you've learned so far in this journey.
Good. Great question. What I've learned so far is I would say I learned a lot about myself because when I first started as an entrepreneur, like getting into it, it was still a lot of that self doubt. Like, I don't know if this is going to happen. And then I really saw my first big win in single family real estate. And when I made that first $10,000, I remember the guy wrote the check,
Woo!
handed it to me in the gym. Yeah, the guy wrote the check, handed it to me in the gym. I looked at it. I went to the bank. They have never seen that much money hit my account before. It took 3 weeks to process the thing.
Right.
And I was like, man, I was like, so this is what it feels like to actually win. And so then I got the next deal, and that one was a $14,000 check, and that was directly deposited. So I was like, then I set up the actual LLC, and then I started doing it over and over. And then I found myself, I was like, okay, I was like 10,000. I said, I know I can do more though. I know I can do better. And so then that's again how I started asking those questions. And it came back to remembrance. I was like, well, I wanted to buy apartment buildings. So this is cool. So what I learned by myself is that I can't allow myself to get comfortable, in which I did get comfortable in single family because I was like, yeah, I'm making checks, I'm making this here. And I forgot, hey, I need to actually build wealth. So something I learned is that it doesn't matter how much money you make per month, that when it stops and you have to start over from zero
Right.
again. And so that's something that I learned with this here, sitting with this here fund is I had to start over uh, and start building from scratch again.
Yeah, that's good, Joseph. So, two things that were coming to mind when you were talking. It's so funny because when I do these podcasts, I'm always having to like listen to you guys and think about where's the direction I'm going to go next with this. So it's like my both brains have to be like working. But two things that were popping in my mind when you said that is something that I learned through the mentor that I work with, and one of those was he said, Jeff Bezos always says it's always day one. Right. Like it's always the start of our day one as an entrepreneur. But the other part I wanted to talk about is we were talking about the wealth. And I think that's so awesome because that's one of the things that I'm working on is moving from this operator mindset to this investment mindset. And, when we're running the day to days of our business, we're an operator standpoint, right? Like we're doing all the
Yep.
grind and trying to get the money in daily. Right. And that's where I'm at right now because I'm trying to build this thing out. And it's like, it's everywhere. It's like all over because I'm in the midst of building, which is probably the part that I hate the most because I'm the forward facing person. Now I have to be in the back. I have to do both. I got to be forward facing and back. Right. And
Yep.
so the whole objective of that is that when it's done, then I can move from that operator mindset to that investor mindset and get out of the rat race of having to do strategy calls and all these things I have to do all the time, day in, day out. Right. So I think
Yep.
what you're saying is important because I think as business owners, that's where the wealth comes in is when you can transition from that side over into that investor side, get your hands out a little bit, right? Let the people take
Yep.
care of it. You become in the investors. So I like what you're saying and I like what you're doing. At least I like where you're headed, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you. And then like my first big win uh, after setting up the new business was, and this here goes back into like the whole mission accomplishment because when I set this here business up, I got married also at the same time. And the same day the fund was able to accept funds, that was my wedding day.
Oh,
So
wow.
both happened at the same time.
How
And
fun.
then we went for our honeymoon in Tanzania in East Africa. And so for 3 months we're there, but I'm like talking to people, and I have this here sign in the back. I have this little office space there, and it says Africa. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not raising no money right now. What's the reason why people are not sending? I say it's $100,000 to invest in the fund. Why are people not sending this over? And then it dawned on me. I was like, I'm in a foreign country.
Mm.
I was like, this is a barrier. I said, I need to come back. And so I came back, and then like my first big win was acquiring 160 units in Charleston, South Carolina.
Wow.
That was like 3 months after getting back here
Wow.
in
That's
Dallas.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, and I kind of thought it was funny when you were talking at the beginning about your first win, the 10,000, and they had to hold the check, because they had seen it. And it's so funny because you're at this point, you're like, I don't care. I just want the money, put it in there, just get it in my bank account because I earned that. Like, it's like, so, but I
Yep.
think that's cool. And that's what this is all about is, when you have these wins like this, and I think when you start to see, as I say, like the fruits of your labor start to happen because you're doing the work and focusing on the processes and not the end result, right? Like you're focusing on the activity day in and
Yep.
day out. And when I used to work, when I was in the direct selling, I used to have to train my team because I was in a leadership position. And so I always say I'm the person that when I work with people, I teach them how to be consistent because I believe in small, consistent effort every single day adds up to big, surmountable results, right? Like you can't go in and just go crazy one day and expect something to happen overnight. But if you do a bunch of small things over and over and over repetitively, and you build up consistency and discipline, then you end up having these things like you're talking about happen. And I think that's where you get those incredible wins. And then you can see that, hey, now here's the proof that I've done the work and just stayed consistent to the process. So I think that's awesome. And you're obviously doing that because you're getting the wins, because those don't just happen without doing the work.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Awesome.
daily,
Yeah.
daily
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
processes.
Yeah. Do you have do you do like a checklist for yourself daily or do you just kind of mentally do this? Like I do a checklist every day and I've just always done one, but I know everybody's different with that.
Yes, so I do. Like I'll write down the four biggest things that need to be done for that day, or I'll put it
Awesome.
into my phone as reminders, the four biggest things that need to be completed for that day. And then that's why I focus on getting done for that day. So like if I need to write a newsletter, for example, then I'll make sure I focus in on that to get it done for that day.
Yep.
Or if I have three phone meetings with potential investors, then I'll make sure I focus more on that and spend less time on, you know, the other stuff.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, so one more fun question I want to ask you because I always say I like I'm real, obviously, as you can tell. It's like the good, the bad, the ugly with all this, right? Because we've already said that this is not
Hmm.
entrepreneurship. There's a lot of great things that come from it, but it's not for everybody to do, right? We know not everybody can be an entrepreneur. So what I would love
Yep.
to know from you, being in your you've been in business now for 3 years, whatever. A little bit before that you were doing personal training before that, so you went from military, kind of started working on working at these places and then went on your own. I'd love to know what was maybe the most challenging thing for you getting into this entrepreneur space.
The most challenging thing for me getting into the entrepreneur space was, I would say, the lack of money starting out.
Mm, yeah.
So I really had to. So even when I was a personal trainer, that wasn't paying me enough. So
Right.
when I first started learning real estate, I had to take like free mentorship from this guy that I came across. And then I learned real quick that free mentorship is not the best mentorship.
Right.
You want to get in front of people who they value their time enough to say, hey, this is gonna cost X amount. And I'm gonna teach you this and get straight to the point. I literally used 2 or 3 years under mentorship with that guy where I could have gotten to the point quicker.
Mm,
So I would say that was a challenge for me, is that at starting out, I got into entrepreneurship and I wanted to do everything the free way. Let me go YouTube. Let me go talk to this guy here because he's doing it free versus paying 4 or 5 thousand to this guy who's going to get me straight there.
yeah.
So I would say take time out of it. You want to get to your destination as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I think maybe you can answer this for me, but would you say that, I mean, obviously if you're getting the mentorship is important, right? And like you get what you pay for, right? Like it's,
Yeah, you get what you pay for.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think a lot of us, all of us, I mean, really at some point or another had to start out, right? Like we had to start. We're not usually just handed money. And so we have to get resourceful, right? I will say you become industrious when you need to make things happen. But I think the big
Exactly.
thing here, maybe the message that you're sending is that it can be done if you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to stop making excuses and say, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to,
Exactly.
you know,
I would say to put in perspective of what I did to get extra money to even get into like real estate and to get into these things.
hmm
Are you familiar with Petty Cabin in Arlington,
I've
where the
heard of it,
people
but
with
I'm
the
not,
little bikes, people with the little bikes that carry people up to the stadium on those bikes?
yes, yes. I mean, I know, yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
I did that.
Did
I did
you?
that as a yep. I
That's
did
so
that to
awesome.
get extra money on the side while being a personal trainer. Exactly.
I,
So I did
hey,
that
I
to, yeah.
applaud you.
Even got sunburned in Houston. That's
That's so
that's how
funny.
committed I was. That's how committed I was. Like I'm going to do this. So I even got sunburned in Houston.
That is so impressive. I'm telling you, like, way to be just like an overcomer, you got to do what you got to do, and I've done crazy things too when I've needed money. There's things, I mean, I just say, if you believe in whatever it is you're trying to do and you're passionate about it, you do what you got to do, you know?
Yep.
I have a friend that, here's a funny story. I'm going to tie this all together and you're going to laugh at this because I met her when I was teaching aerobics at Bally's in Houston. And at the time, I was late 20s. She was like a late teen. Like she used to come in with her aunt into my classes, and somehow I met her. And then she got on my Mary Kay team and became one of my consultants. And I mentored her. She even watched my kids a couple times. I mean, it's a crazy story. Well, I ended up moving here, and then I think she got out of Mary Kay and she married a police officer, and she went into real estate, started flipping houses. And I don't know
Hmm.
how she started out. I had her on my show and I can't remember how she started out, but this girl had absolutely no money. Came from just the odds. She was in an abusive relationship when I met. I think she was in a marriage when I met her. He was abusive. She left the guy, had young kids. I'm talking like toddlers, like 2, 3 little girls. And then she later on, I
Hmm.
see her. I still follow her on Facebook, but I see her, and she is all like completely a different person now. She's got into real estate, started flipping these houses, and became like this just really awesome house flipper in Houston. And then started getting rental property. And then she started training other people on how to do the same thing that she had learned to do. And now she's doing incredible. In fact, I had her on my Starter Girl show probably a little over a year ago. And it was so funny because she was talking about her CPA and all this. And it was so neat to be able to see her in this space now because I knew where she was when I met her. I knew how she was at the time. She had no money and just living in a really, not the best part of town, and being able to come out of that and do something for herself and for her girls, and just to listen to her dialogue, the way she was talking. It was so completely
Yep.
different.
That all comes from just self-development, learning, reading
Yeah.
books, getting better. It really changes you when you get into entrepreneurship, you grow a lot.
I
I can say
agree.
that this year, like when I was in single family real estate, I did really well with that. But I would say that become switching from being in single family real estate to in multifamily, I've grown more in just this year than I did in the 3 or 4 years that I was in single family.
Yeah.
I've learned so much more.
Yeah. And you're dealing with different people. You're dealing with a different kind, same like niche. So not fully, but same kind of people, but a little bit different kind of people. It's kind of like, I think each time you grow, it's like, I talk about network meetings like this. I think they're, like, because we network in the same communities, they're all different. Some of them you walk in and,
Yep.
these are not your people. Other ones you go into and you're like, these are my people. And you know that as you keep growing, your friendship, they start getting smaller and more narrowed in because you start weeding out people that are not growing at the rate that you're growing or developing in the same way. And you realize the conversations are not the same, and you still like those people. It's just the conversations are different, And so that's what I
Yep.
think is so neat about when we continue to work on ourselves and grow, and sometimes I've had several people come on this show and they talk about, like, this has been like a universal conversation, especially with men. I have this conversation a lot about this. As we grow up, the people start spreading out, like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And,
I noticed
and
that
I'm like,
too.
hey, it's the same thing for women too. It's the same thing. This is why I have a select group of people that I talk to a lot. And and I don't talk to everybody. And I recognize that, that I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. I think you have to find your people, but
Yep.
that's part of it. It's part of the development, it's part of the growth that we get. But I think those conversations are awesome when you find those right people. You know what I mean?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Thank
noticed
you.
that as well when I had switched over, and the people I hung out with in single family, they just
Mm-hmm.
kind of dispersed,
Mm. When you
and
got
I
to the
was like,
next phase of
oh,
your growth.
yep. I was like, oh,
Yep.
I was like, so this. I was like, okay.
Yeah. That's fun, Joseph. Well, I'm excited for you. It sounds like you're doing good things. I know we've gotten to talk a couple of times, but this was fun because I got to learn a little bit more about what you're, kind of what you're working on and what you're doing and all that stuff. And I think that's what's great about doing these interviews. And any advice that you would lend to maybe somebody that, let's say somebody in their 20s is like looking to start something. And I don't know if it's real estate, but maybe they just want to get into some kind of entrepreneur space. What kind of advice would you offer them?
I would tell them as far as great advice, I would tell them to jump right into it and start learning immediately. Don't postpone it. If I knew what I knew then, I would have jumped into multifamily first and just skipped over doing anything else.
Yeah.
Because, and then I would have, so yes, so I would say just jump right into it. Whatever you want to do and just start figuring it out. And
Figure
just
it out.
trust that you'll get it figured out.
Yeah.
You
No
got to be
toe
willing to take
dipping.
those chances. Yeah, no toe dipping. You have to be willing to take those chances.
You got to dive in, right? Just jump in.
Exactly.
I know a lot of us do that, but it's funny that you say this because I was telling somebody the other day, if I knew everything now that if I knew everything then that I knew now, man, I'd have been a rock star. Like I would have had it all figured out by now. But you know what? We're all on our own journey. And that's part of this process is that I think some of us have to get hit in the, head a few times before we go, that is not working. Stop making the same mistake, do something different. Right. But that's our journey, and that's what I think is so beautiful about
Yep.
this is that we get to, there's no, I would say you're never too old to try to do something unless you physically can't do it. If you have a physical limitation that says you can't do it, then don't do it. But I think you're never too
Hmm.
old to do something that you want to do if you believe in it and you feel passionate about it and you're willing to do the work.
Exactly. And you're never too young either.
Exactly. Exactly. That's good,
Yep.
Joseph. Okay, this has been awesome. I have a couple fun questions I want to ask you, totally off of entrepreneurship. This is just like what I call rapid fire. And it's just kind of fun
Okay.
because it lets the people say, hey, who's Joseph, right? Like he does this real estate, but who is he outside of that? So I want to
Yep.
know, what's the first concert you ever went to?
It was a Shinedown concert on
Shinedown.
Marine Corps base.
I remember
A
Shinedown.
Shinedown.
I remember
Shinedown. It was one of
Shinedown.
their, yep. And a guy, a Marine in a Spider-Man suit got body slammed because he was jumping on people's back.
Oh
So
my gosh.
that's the first concert like that I went to. And yes.
Awesome. Awesome. That's one of my favorite questions. Okay. What's your favorite guilty pleasure food? Your favorite, I know you don't eat bad. So, but what's your favorite junky thing, like the worst thing that you love to eat?
I say hmm, there's I say chocolate.
That's not even that
Yeah.
bad for you.
Yeah, chocolate cookies.
Chocolate cookies.
Um
Okay.
yep. And then and Cinnaholic.
That's,
They have those Cinnabons. It's like vegan
oh,
Cinnabons.
yeah. So, okay. So this is reminding me, Jay Mamie, right? Jay
Yes.
Mamie. Okay, so he came on my show, and I think I want to say it was Cinnabons because he does the bodybuilding stuff, right? Like he's the same thing too, does the fitness
Hmm.
stuff. And I asked him that same question. I always remember things about my shows, just so you know. Every show I remember something. It's like crazy. I remember him. I asked him this, and he said, "I think it was Cinnabons." He was He was talking about something donuts that he does it because he never eats them, and then like that's like his one guilty thing that. And it's
Hmm.
so funny when I ask this question because I don't eat a lot of junk either. So I have to like think about it. And I'm like, my big thing right now is this like low carb vanilla yogurt that I found. Like, I don't even like yogurt, but I like this one brand. In fact, I like it so much that they don't have it in the store. And Friday, I had to order groceries from Amazon Fresh because I wanted 3 tubs of that yogurt. And so, and
Yep.
I put low carb granola in it and blackberries in it, and that is like my ice cream. It's like my dessert.
Oh, speaking of ice cream, I would say Cold Stone also.
Yeah, I
The
like ice
chocolate
cream.
ice cream there.
So you like chocolate? That's a given.
Yes.
Chocolate
Yeah, it's a
cookies, chocolate, and
preference.
chocolate ice cream.
Yep.
That's good. That's
I've,
good.
I've been like that since I was a kid. But funny story, when I was a kid, I was actually afraid of chocolate.
Well, I didn't like chocolate for like a long time. Like I hated it. And then one day after I did keto for 2 years, decided I loved chocolate. My mom's like, "What happened? What happened to you? Did alien get you?" Because like when I was a kid, every time I'd go to school and they forced us to take milk, and if there was no white milk, we had to take a chocolate. I'd stick the chocolate on somebody else's tray. I just wouldn't even drink because I did not like chocolate. Now I like chocolate. I don't know. Weird. All right. What a favorite book? Do you have a favorite book that you've read?
Yes. I would say my two. I have two really, but I'm trying to pick which one I wanted to. I'll say How
You can
to
say
Be
both.
Rich.
Okay.
Yeah, How to Be Rich and Outwitting the Devil.
It's good.
How to Be Rich because he teaches you, like one of my favorite parts in that book was J. Paul Getty speaking about how his father raised him, and he was saying that he never saw his dad have anything super lavish or that type of stuff. Instead, his dad taught him that the purpose of being an entrepreneur and having a business is so that you can take care of the men that work for you, because you're
Mhm.
also taking care of their families. So it's your duty to make sure that your business is running smoothly and afloat. And then
Awesome.
outwitting the devil, I like that one because Napoleon Hill, he was more um, how can I say? He was interviewing the devil, is what it was saying, the
Okay.
whole storyline of it. And it was talking about being a drifter and how how he will lead you into being comfortable where you are. And so you have to immediately break that cycle and get out of that so you can keep moving forward. And so that's kind of how, when I told you in single family how I got comfortable, I remembered
Hmm.
that book and I was like, no, I need to break this and get uncomfortable and do something
Bam.
different.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I love that you could figure out those books. You know what you've read. So, and us that read, we know. I have like several books that, like, when I work with my clients, it's like I tell the same books that you need to pick up every time. Same one. Had a client tell me, she says, "You keep talking about this one book all the time." I said, "Because you need to read it." Like, I think every kid coming out of school, it's Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Like, I think every
I like that one.
kid should read that in high school. Like, you should read that book, because it's not just even about good work ethic. It's like good human condition, like character. And so I'm like,
Yep.
everybody should read that book. And so I talk to all my clients all the time. I'm like, if you haven't read it, you need to grab that book. So, all right, Joseph, this has been awesome. So if our audience wants to get in touch with you, let's say they want to learn a little bit more about your work, or maybe they want to reach out to you, I don't know, for something. Maybe you got something they need to know. Where do we want to send them?
You can send them straight to LinkedIn, which is going to be the www.linkedin, in, and then it's just real J Kimbrough. So it's going to be the guy with the blue suit jacket.
We'll find you. I'll make sure when this goes out that we get you tagged and stuff, so that anybody on there can find out where you're at and stuff. So I'm
Okay.
excited for you. You're doing awesome stuff. So good stuff. So thank you for coming on here and sharing and being authentic and real. This is what our audience likes to hear. They like to see people doing extraordinary things. And it's fun that we can get people from all walks of life and different stories and backgrounds, and kind of, highlight and showcase what they're doing, and to make the world, I say, to make the world a better place.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me on.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. To our audience, I want to say, if you enjoy our show, go check us out on your favorite podcast platform. Maybe give us a rating on Apple Podcast, or hit that subscribe button on YouTube, so we can keep sharing these incredible stories. And I want to leave you guys with a parting thought. In order to live the extraordinary, you must start. And every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another. We will see you next time.